Me too. Here they come. Holy record breaking. Thank you, Christy.
No, it's definitely not me. I know it's
Right.
You have some big secret announcement. I think that's what's up.
Yeah, meet Christy Nicolay is my secret announcement. It wasn't a secret. That's why they're coming.
Ah, there's my friend Peggy.
Okay. Did you find Peggy?
I
Oh,
did.
there she
Yeah.
is. Hey, Peggy.
Hi, guys.
Too.
You should have your friend Logan in here.
Logan.
Guys.
Oh, there she is. Also,
Okay,
did you
good.
know Logan is famous in Chile?
Do tell.
Well, we were preparing the Pan American Games in Santiago, and every time I bring Americans, I have to kind of justify like, oh, they have a lot of experience, and I was getting ready to kind of sell Logan, and then they go, oh, we know her, she's very famous, we follow her on Instagram for sport presentation, and then yeah,
Logan's an influencer.
I know.
Nice.
My small corner of the internet.
You're not going to believe who I see in this room, Christy.
Who?
Linda Dene.
No way.
Hi.
Where is she?
This is the Salt Lake reunion. There
Hi,
she is.
It is Salt Lake reunion.
Aww. Linda was my producer in Salt Lake.
That's right.
It was
And
my
then
pleasure.
And shout out to Susan Polikoff-Shaw, who's here somewhere too. There she is.
There she is.
Hi. Hi. Well, I'm
It's a familiar face.
Hey, Christy.
Hi.
So
This is fun. You were right.
I told you it's going to be fun. It's a ton of fun. I'm going to continue to let people in as I see the waiting room get people in it. And also Belinda Leong is here, Christy, who is my bestie since kindergarten. And she was in Salt Lake and she was a volunteer face painter. And Belinda, you can share your experience on how you can also get to the Olympic Games by volunteering to be a face painter. And so she and her husband were around the oval doing face painting, and at one point her husband made a little kid cry because he was horrible. So you got to have a little bit of talent, but I'll never forget that. She wanted to come to the Olympics, and I was like, we need face painters. Come be a face painter.
There's a will, there's a way to get to the Olympic Games. That's for sure. I see Lily, actually, she was my right hand in Sochi 2014. Yep.
Lily.
If it wasn't for Lily, I wouldn't have got Sasha home. That's Jagger, but Sasha's over here. But
all right, well, it's 1:05. People are trickling in. I'll still keep clicking. I told Christy I had to upgrade my Zoom account last minute because we had too many registrants, and I can hold 100, and we had 150 register. So we'll see who shows up. But if you're new to Tempo, my name is Nancy Spooner, and I'm founder of Tempo Live Events. We are we supply event production contractors to agencies around the country and around the globe sometimes. So this think tank is a Zoom happy hour that went awry during COVID. Tempo was my side hustle. I'm an event producer. I'm a show caller. I'm a deck manager. And in 2008, I started this business because I kept getting a lot of people work, and I realized I could probably have a side hustle. Fast forward 2020, the world shut down. There was this thing called Zoom. I'd never really been on it before, but I asked my friends from Tempo to come meet me and have a glass of wine because we just lost all of our gigs. And it ended up becoming an industry think tank where we started meeting up every single Tuesday and sharing how in the heck we're going to survive through this pandemic. What are we doing? What is this thing called Unity? What is a platform? What is vMix? How does it work? Hey, I got a job. Yay, let's celebrate that person. And every week we just kept helping each other learn more about surviving in the virtual world. And you all have just continued to tell your friends about Tempo and tell your clients about Tempo. It wasn't until this year, my 16th year, that I actually tried to find clients, because there's so many of you now that I feel like we need to get more work for you. So thank you for growing Tempo the way you have and being such a huge part of my life. I absolutely love, love, love what I do. And I get a lot of phone calls or emails asking about the Olympics. Nancy, how can I get to the Olympics? You've done the Olympics. Yeah, I did one Olympics, and not that I haven't been offered. The second one I had to bail on, and not that Christy hasn't offered, but due to child rearing and dates and times and stuff, it kind of stopped after Salt Lake. But it was such an awesome experience. So I thought, I'm going to bring in the person I know who knows more about event production in the Olympics than anybody in the whole wide world It's my friend Christy Nicolay. And we met in 1990 something, late 90s at I think it was 99 at the X Games in San Francisco, where I was thrown into a tower and was told to direct a show for the live audience. Did not know what I was doing, but I had Christy as one of my teammates. She was field producing, so she would go grab the interviews with the athletes, and I'd stand in the tower and she'd say, I've got an interview with Travis Pastrana. And I was like, great, go interview. And then somebody would say, I have to read a promo. And I'd say, great, read your promo. And then the video director was like, I got a video. And I'd say, great, roll your video. And one day, Christy, at the end of X Games, said she's going to Sydney to work at the Olympics with Johnny Mosley. And I was like, oh, that sounds awesome. I want to go to the Olympics someday. And that's truly all I had said to her is, awesome, I want to do it someday. And then I got a call not that long later that Christy had received the executive producer of sport production, which is event production, and in Salt Lake. Did I want to come? And I was like, well, yes, I do. And it was then that I realized if I wasn't proactive and I didn't say when the national anthem was going to start, and if I didn't call that cue as a show caller, that the whole worldwide feed would be off. And I realized, well, that's my job. So it took a couple of years for me to figure out what my job was as a show caller or show director or sport director. I don't know what the title is anymore. But it's thanks to Christy. And from that one job, I met Tony Crescenzo, who was our entertainment producer, who took me to the corporate world of events. From that one job, Susan Polikoff-Shaw, raise your hand, was our press chief at the Oval. I produced speed skating at the Olympic Oval. And Susan said to me, we need you at gymnastics. Will you come talk to USA Gymnastics? And I faked my way through a proposal on Microsoft Word. How do you write a proposal? And I faked a proposal, and I ended up working for USA Gymnastics for, I think, like 18 years, producing their live event. And the relationships that have come and how that ball just keeps on rolling is amazing. And I owe so much of my career in sports because I then get the US Open because of Christy. I've done fencing because of Christy. I can't remember what other sports I've done, but they all really stem. There's usually that one person, right, that really kicks your career off, and that is Christy Nicolay. So I'm honored and so glad that she's here and that you guys get to meet her, because she's a badass and she's kind of a big deal. And I make her, I always tell her that when I see her. And you had a shirt one time that said kind of that somebody bought you.
Right. Yeah. That's funny because I still have it. I don't wear it because I only wear it like if my husband's giving me a hard time, and then like I put it on and then he's like,
I'm kind of a big deal.
My assistant in Vancouver got me that, and I still have it, but just in case.
Sure.
One moment.
So she doesn't think she's a big deal, but I'm done telling you how much I love her, and I'm so stoked that she's here. I'm going to hand it over to Christy. We're going to hear Christy's backstory, and then we're going to start some Q&A and some sharing of how else you can get involved in the Olympics, because Peggy Katz is here, met her in Salt Lake or at the X Games. I don't remember at this point.
X Games
and now
first, I think, and then
yeah, and now she's part of Tempo's team. Susan Polikoff-Shaw is also on our team. Susan was at the Oval with me doing press stuff. Logan Clements, I met at the US Open, but Logan's been in the Olympics and been playing with Christy. And Linda Dene was at the Olympics. Like, if you have experience, and if you were at the Coca-Cola tent or the Heine House or whatever, and you've been there and you've seen, I just want all of us to talk to each other about, here's what I know, here's what I think we can do. I mean, there is LA 2028.org, which will start ramping up and start looking for people. But this is just to help each other out, and let's find our way into LA 2028. And without further ado, Christy Nicolay, the floor is yours. Where'd you come from? How'd you get here? Tell us your story. It's awesome.
Oh boy, that's a big, long story. I feel bad for Logan because I think she just heard my whole life story. We were in Brussels recently on our way to Paris. So I apologize in advance, Logan, but don't worry. Peggy also knows it. There's a lot. Anyway, we'll try to do the cliff notes. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for having me. This is fun. I think I'm going to crash this meeting like every month. Okay. Yes. But yeah, so Nancy asked me to do this. I think we were in the middle of the games in Paris, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, sure, no problem. And then I thought, I have lots of time and I'm going to prepare this like awesome presentation with cool photos and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden it was last night. It was like, okay, so we're gonna kind of wing it a little bit. Luckily, during the pandemic, my company that I work for, because we were all sitting around and had nothing to do either, made us do like our origin story. And then they said, oh, and you have to do it like in under 2 minutes. So I have this really super quick Nancy kill time while I try to do this from my other laptop. Okay, good. Stand by.
Killing time. This is not a fake backdrop behind Christy. How cute is her little pad in Palm Springs? That dog
It's
is
true,
real.
because there's a dog, my Jagger.
And he will move. Christy did rescue her other dog from Sochi in Russia. There were a lot of stray dogs in Sochi, and there's Sasha.
Oh, yeah.
Rescued.
I actually was not trying to share that, but
And that's Bobby. I'm stalling for you. Bobby's former. Can I tell
I'm not
what
sure
Bobby
why
did?
my, here we go.
Bobby's kind of a big deal too.
He's been like nonstop on the news the last 2 days. Hence why I'm in the living room. I got kicked out of the office because he's been doing like, you know, stuff about the Trump shooting. I don't know, like CNN and stuff. So anyways, I'm out of the office. So yeah, so you can see this is from July 2020. So we're just gonna go fast. But this is like, yeah. So I grew up in Oregon in Happy Valley. I had all brothers. This is why I got into sports. They made me do everything. But I liked baseball and skateboarding. And I also could not wait for the Oregonian to arrive because I was like obsessed with the travel section. I wanted to go anywhere all the time, like please. So far I knew I love sports and travel. Then I was supposed to go to University of Oregon with all of my friends. I was registered, had a dorm room, everything. But my boyfriend at the time took me on a 2-month sailing trip around the San Juan Islands. And I met all these people that just traveled, well, because they were rich and they just traveled around the world. And I was like, oh, I want to do that. So I came home and told my parents I was going to defer school and I was just going to travel. And they said, well, if you can figure out how to make a living and do that, then go ahead. So then in the Oregonian and my little paper, there was an ad to be a flight attendant for Continental Airlines. And I was 18 and I didn't tell anybody. It was the day before Thanksgiving, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And I drove over the bridge from Portland, Oregon to Vancouver, Washington, where my interview was. And I interviewed to be a flight attendant for Continental Airlines. And I think it was like my first proper interview. Didn't really know what I was doing, but they hired me and they gave me 3 days to move to LA. So my interview was on Wednesday before Thanksgiving and my first day of work was Monday after Thanksgiving. So that didn't really work out because I love to fly. I hate to serve. I don't know anything about like coffee. I was never like a waitress. So I just was not good at that. And so I moved south to Orange County because I couldn't go home because then I would be like a failure. And I did everything else. So I was like a gymnastics coach, a park ranger. I say park ranger, but really I was a cadet. And this is kind of the first thing. I was kind of helping organize surf competitions at San Onofre and San Clemente. So that's kind of how I got the background of like an event, but didn't really realize it at the time. And then I was an aerobics instructor and I spent 8 years managing the fitness center at the Ritz-Carlton. Then all my friends were graduating, whoops, and I went back to school because all my friends are graduating. I'm like, oh, I'm a loser. I didn't go to college. So I went to like this like junior college in Mission Viejo. And then I transferred to Cal State Long Beach. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I still just knew that I love sports and I love to travel. And I took like a film class because I thought it would be an easy A. And that sort of got me into production. And then I was, my mom and I took a mother-daughter trip. I missed a slide for this part, to Club Med in St. Lucia, and MTV was shooting there. And that is how like I got into MTV. So I thought that, you know, like, oh, I was gonna, you know, go to, like, I transferred to Cal State Long Beach, and then I thought like, oh, film school. And then I thought, oh, I'll get an internship. And I thought that now I had a path on my way to production. And then I got this call one day from a colleague, just like a friend, I would say even like an acquaintance, that said, hey, you know, we heard you switched your major to TV and film. And I'm like, yeah, someday I'm going to grow up and be like you guys. And then they said, well, do you want a job? So I dropped out of school. I dropped out of Cal State Long Beach. I never finished. Don't tell anybody that. But yeah, I never finished. And I started working at MTV, and I worked at MTV when it was cool. Okay. So I was doing like rock and jock. I don't know if you guys can figure out these three people. Anybody? They look very young there. Nancy?
Charlie Sheen.
It's
Clooney.
No.
George.
I got it.
Clooney.
It's
Clooney.
Jon
Clooney.
Stewart.
Yes.
Jon
One more.
Stewart.
Yep. And one more not as famous, but
Dan Cortez.
that is correct. Nancy, do you have prizes? We have to give these people prizes.
That's chocolate. Who was that?
It's Jeff, who spent a decade at MTV.
There we go.
There, Jeff
See?
Frank. Okay. Chocolate your way, Jeff.
So Dan Cortez and I were PAs together, and we shared a desk. Like we had a phone and a desk, and they were auditioning for a host for MTV Sports. And Dan was like one of these guys, he was a PA until he got discovered, kind of. And then, I don't know, I think we were doing like 10 auditions, and then they had someone didn't show up, and he went and auditioned, and he became the host of MTV Sports. And then he was kind of a staple for MTV. So I was there like during the cool years. I worked on rock and jock, but like all the spring breaks, crazy, lots of MTV Music Video Awards and Singled Out. So I helped cast Jenny McCarthy for Singled Out, and then my big title was executive in charge of talent, but really I just cast the one picker. It was like the one girl or the one guy that picked from the 50 girls or 50 guys. And then I was telling Nancy earlier that when I got the job at MTV, I didn't know, I was so young and naive. Like, I didn't know that I was a freelancer. I thought that oh, cool, I got this job. Like, I work at MTV. But I worked on a show called Trashed, and, we shot for 13 weeks. And then at the end, the last day, everybody's like running around the office handing out their resumes. And even like my boss, the lady that I worked for, and I was like, what are you doing? She's like, you got to get your next gig. And I'm like, no, I work here at MTV. Like, no, you don't. You work on a show, and now you got to get your next show. So that was when I learned what it was like to be a freelancer. And my deal with my parents was if I was never not working for a month, I would go back to school. But luckily I went on, and this is obviously not everything, but I just went on and started doing a bunch of stuff. And one of the things, a person I met at MTV, she was working on the Eco Challenge and this adventure race. Her name is Lisa Hennessy, and she worked for Mark Burnett. And if you don't know who Mark Burnett is, he created Survivor and The Voice and lots of shows. And so he used to be called like the king of reality TV. Anyway, he was doing this Eco Challenge race, and I got onto this race, and I did them all in all of these countries. And it's also where I met my husband. And Mark still likes to say he introduced us. Sort of, I guess. But from there, I went to ESPN. So because of the Eco Challenge was actually part of X Games one year. And that was how I got to ESPN's X Games in San Diego. And as Nancy said, I started there as a field producer. I was became the first ever, what we now call a venue producer, but it was a venue director there. I loved field producing, so I went back to that. At one point, I was the event director. And then while we were in San Francisco, the same year that I met Nancy, NBC was starting a new show called Gravity Games. It was their action sports show. And then they came and actually physically recruited me for Gravity Games. And I loved ESPN. I didn't want to leave. All my friends were there. But I did always have in the back of my mind, the Olympic Games, ever since I was a kid, because I always loved sports and always had followed it. And so luckily that paid off. And I went to Sydney, and I didn't really realize how good I had it. So I worked for NBC. I did a segment called Johnny Mosley Down Under. And if you don't know Johnny, so Johnny was, he's a Olympic freestyle skier. He was kind of like the poster kid from the Nagano Games. He won all kinds of medals. He's famous for his dinner roll move. And the whole concept was, what do you do with an Olympic gold medalist from the winter in the summer when you have full credential access and like nothing to do? So, so it was me, Johnny, and a camera guy. And I couldn't find all the pictures because this is before, you know, digital, but we did things like we went up in the Goodyear blimp and we covered, that's Michael Johnson, the track star. We went to his birthday party, which was at Planet Hollywood. We hung out on Elle Macpherson's yacht. We hung out with Muhammad Ali at the Sports Illustrated party. It was just ridiculous. And I didn't, that's also when I learned the value of accreditation, because I had everything there. I could go, you know, to the Athletes Village. I could go to all the parties. I could go to the International Broadcast Center. I could go in the NBC area, which now we know like has the best food, better than anyone. So it was, so when your first Olympic gig is that, it's kind of all downhill from there, but not really, but kind of. But yeah, so that was really fun. And I didn't know, well, I was kind of interviewing already for Salt Lake. And I actually got the job for Salt Lake before I was finished in Sydney. And that is where I got to hire Ms. Linda Dene, who was one of my lead producers. So awesome. We had a lot of fun there. And for me now, so I've done 14 Olympic Games, well, 12, but 14 if you count Junior Olympic Games. But for me now, I still would say there'll never be another Salt Lake until there's Salt Lake, which is coming now in 2034. So yeah, so Salt Lake was the best games I've ever been a part of. And I mean, Paris is up there, and Rio was a lot of fun, and you know, but still, I mean, Nancy, if you were going to work one, you worked the right one, because it was truly like just a great experience all the way around. And yeah, and now, you know, it's going back there, so let's see. I'll be super old, but you never know. So from Salt Lake, I didn't know that it could be a career. Like I thought, oh, kind of bucket list. Like I did, you know, I'm so lucky. I did 2 Olympic Games, not 1, but 2. And I had no idea that there were, like, Susan knows people, Logan, Peggy's done like 4 or 5 right now. So 6, Peggy's done 6. I didn't know that this could be a career. Like I just thought like, okay, cool. I did, you know, Sydney, I got super lucky. I did Salt Lake, it was in my country. And then one day I married the guy from Eco Challenge, and he's from New York. So we were in the process of moving to LA. And like everything was, you know, on moving trucks, and the last thing to go was my car. And I got this call. I remember that I had to pull over in New York City, and I got this call, and it was this like British woman, and she said, please hold for Chief Operating Officer Martin Simicek, Athens, 2004. And I thought it was like my friends doing a joke, and I'm like, oh, who is this, right? And then this man gets on, and he's like, when can you come to Athens, today or yesterday? And I was like, still thought it was a joke. And I'm like, hey, come on, who is this? And then he was like, I checked around, and, you know, we had a Greek guy, but he's not so good. And he's 2 years doing nothing. And, you know, when can you come? And it was I said, oh, you know, thank you. I'm very flattered, but, you know, my husband and I are moving. What do you need the husband for? There's plenty of Greek men. So it was kind of the start of a funny and long negotiation. And that's a whole nother like topic, was my experience in Athens, which I also somehow talked Linda Dene into coming to, and Peggy, actually, now that I think about it. So not the easiest games there. But anyway, that kind of got me into Olympic world and big games world. And I just kind of went on. And so Paris, like I said, was my 12th, 14th, if you count the juniors, but also Pan American Games, which are, I think, even more fun than Olympic Games. The World Games are a blast, because those are all the sports that are trying to get into the Olympic Games. So there are things like drone racing and canoe polo and sumo wrestling and like
And
just
breakdancing.
breakdancing we did that in in 2022 in Birmingham, and now it was just in Paris. So it's all the sports that are trying to get in. So if you can get on a World Games, that's really fun. We also did Arab Games in Doha. So anyway, a lot of games there. And if you want to do that, it can definitely be a career. So yeah, also if you want pictures with Olympic rings, that's the best way to get a job on the Olympic Games, because then you're like, yeah, you're just all over the world with Olympic stuff. And what else did I put in here? Oh, so I have always done sport production, or sometimes they call it sport presentation. And for Tokyo, when there were going to be no fans, and also for Beijing, the IOC and OBS. So OBS is the Olympic Broadcast Services. So they're the host broadcaster. And they, Giannis, who's the head of OBS, and Thomas Bach, who's the president of the IOC, had this idea for something called the Athlete Moment. And as I wasn't going to Tokyo, that's another long story, but wasn't going to Tokyo, they called me up and said, hey, we have this project, and we really need you to run it. And that was how the Athlete Moment for Tokyo started. And what it is, you can kind of tell from the pictures here, and I have a video that'll hopefully it will work. But this was a way to connect the athletes with their families, because in both Tokyo and in Beijing, we were in a bubble. You couldn't go anywhere except your hotel and your venue and back. Well, Tokyo, you could go after, I think, 10 days. Was it, Logan? I think 10 days we were in a bubble.
14.
14, yes. Longer, right. Thanks,
Painful
Susan.
memories. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes. So, yeah, so we did this thing where you can see here, it's kind of like it's a station. And it's kind of like, it's special technology software, but basically it's like a giant Zoom call. And then we have a whole team in Brussels that connect the families. And then what we do on the ground is we're the producers on the ground that are trying to, follow the stories, follow the athletes, see who like doesn't have their families there. I mean, in Tokyo and Beijing, no one had their families. So it was much, much easier. I love the one on the bottom because this girl really wanted to see her dog. So that's the bottom right picture. But so we were creating content for OBS. And then in Tokyo, I had only a team of 9 producers. In Beijing, I had a team of 13, even though it was winter and it was much smaller. And I didn't think there would be any chance of this project continuing, especially for Paris, because like the venues were already sold out. Everybody's families are already going there. Like, I just thought we were going to be a complete failure, and we weren't. And so I had a team of 20 producers, 20 tech guys, and I think we had about 20 students as well. Logan and Peggy were 2 of my producers there. And yeah, so it's super successful, and they're already talking about Milano Cortina. So that was yeah, so let's see if this will play. Let's see here. Just to give you, I probably won't be able to hear it, but yeah. Just to basically it's a lot of cheering and some background music, but you can kind of see. And the athletes are really oh, we had a proposal, 2 proposals actually, one at badminton and one at rhythmic gymnastics. And it's fun. It's like, I don't know, Peggy and Logan, I can let them talk if they want to about that. Logan got, oh, Logan, should I show your basketball players?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, hold on. I did just stand by here. I'm not sharing anymore, right? Okay.
So I realize as Christy's telling you all these things, all these events that she's done, what she's done is if I'm correct, like in Salt Lake, she's basically the executive producer, the vice president. I don't know what title she has anymore, but She
Love
hires
those.
all the DJs, all the event producers, all of the field producers, all of the announcers, like basically what we have in a corporate ballroom. If you have not done sports, it's the same darn thing. We are in communication with broadcast, but we're making sure the people with butts in the seats are having a good time. And so she hires all those event production people to make sure everyone in the seats is having a good time. And she's also hasn't told you, she has actually changed a lot of the way the Olympics are run in terms of event production. For example, I know in Salt Lake, it was the first time they ever allowed music to be played in the oval during a race.
Right.
You know, a 5K race, 10K race can get a little boring. Well, Christy brought her X Games and her action sports background and threw it at the Olympics and said, we can do this. It'll be more entertaining. It's going to be more engaging. And she really upped the level. When you guys go to any sporting event now, you hear and see so much stuff going on as a spectator in your seat. And a lot of that is Christy's doing that she brought to the Olympics as well. And that's the only one I know off the top of my head, but I know you've done a lot. Did you
Yeah,
change the
thanks.
medal ceremonies from 3-2 to 1?
Did,
But
yes.
that's not
So-
small.
No, so as I said, we were already doing X Games. So I started at X Games in 1996. So by the time I went to Sydney in 2000, like I felt like I knew everything about live event production. Like I would say that at X Games, we were way ahead of what Olympic Games was doing. This is not a knock on Sydney. It was just that they just weren't doing what we were doing in the US. And so when I went to Sydney and on the NBC side, you know, I had some time to observe like what was happening on the live event and sport presentation. And I mean, they were like, they didn't have DJs, for instance. They had CDs and the audio operators were just playing the CD. So like the song, the tempo didn't really match, or it wasn't like the right music for the right demographic of sport. Like it was easy for me. Like there's like a lot of things to fix here. And one day I was sitting with my future boss in Salt Lake, guy named Scott Givens, and we just watched the gold medal match for volleyball. And, you know, we'd done like medal ceremonies already at X Games, and I'd done them in some other sporting events. And then what they did there is they were still doing victory, they call them victory ceremonies in Olympic Games. So they were doing like gold first, then silver, and then bronze. And it was super anticlimactic, and it took forever. Like now we have to be ready for a team victory ceremony in 10 minutes. They took like, I don't know, like 40. Like it was really long, and people were leaving, and there wasn't much like to keep the crowd there. So yeah, so I was sitting there with my future boss, and he said, oh, well, how would you change this? And so you know, I didn't really have anything to lose, and I just said, well, it's super boring. They should reverse the order. And then when I got the job at Salt Lake, it was one of the first things that we did. So he got a team together, and we went to the IOC, and the order of ceremonies had been happening that way since whatever 1896, or like they always did gold first, then silver, then bronze. And so we, you know, reversed the order, and now to this day it's still bronze, silver, and gold. So yeah, I always forget those things.
But that's huge to me, right? Like that's someone's idea of just not doing it the old stodgy way. Like change it up. And it
Yeah.
worked.
It was a long time ago. But we also, you know, we added DJs, we added field, you know, I was a field producer at X Games, and Olympic Games didn't have them. We're like, how could you not talk to people in the crowd, or people, you know, or athletes, or coaches, or whoever it is. So we always, you know, added the field talent and field producers. And then we started doing more and more with video boards. So in Vancouver was the first time that we had a screen at the top of the half pipe. And what we did there is we told the athletes, I'll never forget, like Shaun White was one of the first athletes that we shot for that screen. And we told him he was coming for a photo shoot. I mean, yeah, for a photo shoot, but then we were actually shooting video. And so he was, you know, he had long red hair at the time. And so he was kind of like fluffing his hair. And so really we caught his personality, and we kind of cut that up into, you know, little video segments that went on the screen at the top of the half pipe. I stole the idea from X Games. We were doing it at X Games, not that way, but just with like drawings, I guess, or name animations or something. But then it's the first time in Olympic Games was in Vancouver. But I mean, it's harder, and I would say it's it gets harder and harder to be more innovative because there's just like sometimes I'll think of an idea and like, oh yes, and then I'll go and like, ah, someone already did that. So it's yeah. So anyway, I'm going to share if this will play here. So this is Logan's work. She was at basketball in Paris. And let me see. I don't know. Logan, I think you can see. Watch quickly for Logan. Okay. So she got the USA team in an athlete moment. Play on computer. Play. I do not know. I'm hitting play. It's not playing.
Oh, that stinks.
I don't know. It's like I'm playing this for my other. Let me stop and try again. Hang on.
Your dog's on the couch.
Yeah, where'd it go? Jagger. Sasha's right here, but he's being shy.
Have fun, Logan. Talk about a dream team. Holy smokes.
She can probably play it faster. I don't know why it's not playing. Share. You can see it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes apples mean like that.
I don't know.
Oh, well.
Anyway.
Well, the anticipation of it was we had gotten a list of athletes that on Team USA, we had limited access to who we were allowed to interview for our moment because NBC wanted to do that for, if you guys watched the NBC feed, they did that for certain athletes across certain sports. But, you know, as a producer, you always aspire for some serendipitous moments. So we always were like, oh, well, if LeBron James just happens to know the person who's on the screen as well, maybe he would stop and have an athlete moment. And sure enough, we had an old coach of his that was there. We intended it for another athlete, him, Kevin Durant. They walk by and they interact with our station, which just kind of made our life complete, to be honest, for that long. I feel like the Olympics are so much fun, but it was some long days and we were like, look at that, we made it happen. So that was really cool. And they had their gold medals on too. So that was the fun part too. They're showing their medals to folks back home.
Yeah.
Little moments. That's so awesome. Well, it's
I can't explain it. Usually the videos play there, but anyway, Logan,
I know
she killed it and everyone did. Peggy, everyone there. So it was really fun. And now what? I lost my
awesome
again.
So having said all of this and getting to know Christy and her background and what goes on, I want to now open it up to those who have been there and those who know there's so many jobs that are going to be available for us in Salt Lake. I mean, in Salt Lake, in LA, I can look at, and Salt Lake, I can look at my oval and I'm looking at parking logistics and porta potties and transportation and food and beverage. And I mean, it's going to run the gamut. Logan, Peggy, Susan, someone else said they were in at ceremonies I saw in our list in the chat room. Tell us what you guys have seen and what you suggest, or where do you think people should be looking and aspiring to, and how to get involved in the Olympics, from even volunteering to face paint. Like, you guys go.
I would say I've worked 16 games, 16 Olympics, and a bunch of other events, even like one of the early X Games. Oh my God, stories about that too. But I would say there are so many different paths that you don't even know what they are right now. You can go local organizing committee, which I did for Salt Lake. I've worked 10 games for the IOC in press operations. You can do NBC, which I've done. I did US Olympic and Paralympic Committee. So there's all these routes, I think. And I really think for this group, the local organizing committees, especially for LA, is going to need a lot of help. So sometimes they hire they always hire a company to, search for you. But it always helps if you have someone on the inside, of course. And I would start sniffing around there. There's more venues than ever. They're not building any venues. They're all going to be concentrated in LA. So I would start I'd start now
Yeah.
for your production stuff. Don't wait.
Yeah, they're always so they're really big into LinkedIn. So I know you guys are. I'm super terrible at LinkedIn myself, but they do a lot. They post, I think, almost all their jobs on LinkedIn, and they were kind of moving slow, but they sent a huge observer groups to, I think, big groups to Paris, and I feel like now they're kind of like, oh, we gotta get going. So I think they're going to be hiring a lot of people soon.
And I also get the sense that they, well, not just them. I don't think anyone thought Paris would be as successful as it was. And
Yeah.
in terms of logistic and presentation and TV ratings and all that. So now I think LA is very American competitive and
Yeah.
they want to do better and they want to hire great people. And
Yeah.
yeah.
They kind of, I mean, this is just a rumor, but I'd kind of heard that they didn't really want people with experience. They were kind of like, no, we're doing our own thing. And, but then I think, as Susan said, after Paris, they were like, oh, we gotta get on this. So, especially it'll be hard to compete with the venues in Paris. If you saw, like equestrian was at Versailles, and fencing at the Grand Palais, and, beach volleyball under the Eiffel Tower. Like, we don't really have a lot of that going on in LA. So we're gonna have to up the game somewhere else. But like Susan said, there's a lot of different places to work for. Even, I had a friend in Paris that just could not get into the organizing committee because she didn't speak, her French just wasn't quite good enough. But then she got on with Coca-Cola and she loved it. So it was her best job ever, Olympic Games ever, working for Coca-Cola. So, and like I said, there's a host broadcaster, and then there's all the rights holders. So NBC is just one of the 80 rights holders. So there's a lot.
I know you mentioned Coca-Cola. I know you don't think there are no sponsors during the games themselves in the venues, but there are partners with the IOC, and they all have, not all, but a lot of them have experiences set up in the Olympic City area, and you can do simulated bobsled, things like that. So there are opportunities with sponsors like Airbnb and Coca-Cola, as you mentioned, and Intel and Panasonic. There's a whole slew of them. And there are jobs there as well.
Yeah, definitely.
I think On Location is a pretty big hospitality group that needs a lot of help as well. I know a lot of people working for them, and they're based in the hotels, and they arrange for tickets and transportations for a lot of the big companies like Visa or Coke. So that's good. One other thing I think is important to know is just as far as timeline, a lot of times they start running test events. Is it like a year out, Christy?
Mm-hmm. 2 years. Sometimes it can be 2 years before. But definitely 1 year before all the test events. They're usually official qualifiers for the international federations, and so they'll be doing some sort of qualifier in that venue. So they're really testing the venue. But for us, in sport presentation, it's really big for us to be testing everything from announcers to our space to whatever, our choreography for victory ceremonies or whatever it is. So they'll start doing those, should be doing them 2 years out, but a lot of them will be 1 year before.
It's kind of like a tech check. I'm just gonna translate for you guys, like a tech check, but it's really happening in the venue, making sure everything's working. How's the seating? How's the parking? How's the restroom? It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Test events are pretty cool.
Yeah, I also think just looking, I would say, I mean, you're hearing timelines here, but 18 months out ahead of a games is probably the latest you want to be looking. I know I had some folks earlier this year interested in roles for this year's games, but unfortunately, things usually are staffed up by then. I know we talk about LA, but shout out to the winter games. They might not be as sexy as the summer games, but that was my first Olympic experience. Was volunteering in Korea at the Pyeongchang winter games, and it's a little, not as many sports or disciplines as the summer, but just as, big of a show that they're putting on. So I know we're almost 18 months out from Milano Cortina already, which I can't believe, Christy. I just was talking to somebody like that's like next month. But and then also volunteering. That's again, my first experience was volunteering with Team USA. So it's an unpaid, unpaid gig, but it did give me behind the scenes access to certain areas that, if you're just a regular fan who bought tickets, you didn't have access to. And that then gave me the experience and the anecdotes when going after paid gigs that I was able to bring that with me versus just coming in cold. So, and then I'm also going to drop in the chat, Jet Set Sports was another company that ahead of Tokyo that is one of the few places I see that actually does like a CV drop. Like you actually submit, go through interview processes, and then they hire people. They're very similar to On Location, where it's like logistics and transportation, hospitality management, volunteer opportunities for Team USA. They just have them on. If you like Google Team USA, they recruit volunteers again, like 18 months out. If you're looking only a year out, they've probably staffed up, but that's really fun. I know some people who are super volunteers and have volunteered at the last 8 Olympic Games. So you can find a buddy and have somebody to crash with, to save on costs and things. And then you can also volunteer for the local organizing committee, like LA 28, I'm sure is recruiting tons and tons of volunteers, but I enjoyed the Team USA side, was fun.
And the volunteer treatment was really cool with the organizing committee. I mean, the uniforms, the food, I think in the training, I think our volunteers were treated so well, and every day you got a new gift. When you showed up, you got another gift. Like it was just, I don't know if it's still the same, but the volunteers I had at the Oval were treated so well because they wanted you to come back. And
the access. Volunteers have access to athletes. Sometimes they're lining them up for medal ceremonies. Sometimes, it's incredible. You can't buy that ticket. I would definitely.
Well, one of our students that we had on Athlete Moment, she was an Olympic snowboarder, competed in Beijing. She's an American, but she had Malta. She's competed for Malta. So as a snowboarder. She was an athlete the first time, and the second time she's at Olympic Games, she was a student for us. And then I needed her to kind of go everywhere with me. And she had, like the accreditation in Olympic Games runs like blue, red, white. And like white means you have nothing and you need an upgrade pass. And red is back of house and blue is field of play. And so she ended up getting like blue, 2, 4, 5, which are like almost all the numbers except for 6, which is Olympic family. And then she had all. So she was able to like go everywhere, every venue. And it was kind of like reminded me of me in Sydney. Like her next game, she's not gonna really realize how good she had it, but because accreditation, that is tough. And yeah, if you do something, like if you love Olympic Games and if you love one sport, go for that sport 100%. But if you want to see a lot of sports, try to go for a job or a volunteer job that is like amongst a lot of the different venues, because then you'll get to move around a bit and won't just be stuck at one venue. But
I want to put a plug in for the torch relay as well. So before that, I'll toot my own horn. I worked for Salt Lake Olympics and I did the volunteer uniforms and the torch relay uniforms. I ended up just working for worked with Marker. I was just a project that I got to do, and accreditation and athlete bibs and all that stuff I got to do as a designer on SLOC. And I got to spend time on the torch relay. Most fantastic experience. And you meet inspiring people. You meet athletes. You get to just, meet everyday people. And I think that was probably one of the best memories I have for being in a van and in the lead car, and you got to move around and you got no sleep, and it was still great. So just something to think about. If you're not going to do the entire like Olympic experience, you could choose to go just for the torch relay, see parts of the country.
That's a great gig, especially if you get to go to Athens when it's lit and then you get to go on the plane. But yeah, I think I ran once, but I know people that worked it that say like, yeah, you don't sleep, but it's incredible. So yeah, that's a good.
Ariel's asking about deck management at ASM, show calling, opening, closing ceremonies. Vicky Fairhurst is one of our contractors, and she's in Australia, and she just got back from Paris, and she was at ceremonies. So she might be a connection at Tempo. You can hit her up on Slack. But Christy, ceremonies, is that what your team's been doing? Like the medal ceremony, are you removed from that, or does that go through the organizing committee, or?
It depends on the games. I haven't been in charge of victory ceremony since Rio 2016, I think. It depends. Each committee can do it their own way. In Asia, in Pyeongchang, in Beijing, and in Tokyo, it was a completely separate team. Yeah, you just never know where it's gonna fall. Sometimes it's part of ceremonies, the team that does opening and closing, and then well, we used to do team welcome, but not anymore. But sometimes it's part of that. Sometimes it's side by side with sport presentation. So I've done both. I think in Sochi, we were one team. We were sport presentation, sport production, and victory ceremonies. In Vancouver, we were sport production. We produced Whistler Medals Plaza, so all the nightly concerts, team welcome ceremonies, medaling, athlete transport, and I don't know, had like 5 things in Vancouver. So it really depends on how the organizing committee sets it up. But yeah.
Hey, Nancy, can I chime in with a quick question?
I'm nodding yes, of course. Who's that? Go for it. Is that you, Jeff? Hey, Jeff.
It's Jeff, yeah. Hey, Jeff Frank here. I'll also toot my own horn, veteran at 3 Olympics, including Salt Lake, and Sydney, and Atlanta. So all this is great. I appreciate identifying all the potential different areas or vendors or folks potentially hiring. I think what I'd love to hear is if there's actionable information or intel to share, as we're all friends here in the networking. Do we have any identified recruiters either in LA or beyond that we are able to reach out to or try to LinkedIn to? I think that will really help people is try and take it from more nebulous, here's all the different departments and areas, to reaching out to actual people who may be able to help us. And the answer may be no. It may, those folks might not have been identified yet, but I just wanted to throw that out there as kind of a more tangible question.
That's a great question. I didn't know anybody. That's why I did this, to find out if we all come together. But Christy, do you know?
Not as far as I know, not yet. Susan or someone else may have some more insider information. They had a big change with their CEO. So all of the people that I do know, actually one of my former bosses is in there, and they're all kind of on short-term contracts. They don't have like their full-time gigs yet that take them through the games because of the change in the new CEO. So the new CEO has started, but I think from what I hear, everyone's just kind of waiting. So I think when they move, they're going to move fast. But I think right now they're not quite at that point yet, but they should be soon. That's what I gather. But let's see. I'm not in yet. If I were, I would tell you all how to do it. but I am also not in there. So let's see.
Anybody else have any more questions?
I just wanted to share a quick insight on how I got into Olympics.
Oh boy.
So I worked at the Sochi Olympics back in Russia a while ago. So just long story short, first I volunteered at a big event that was Universiade. It's a university games, pretty much same as Olympics, just for universities. I volunteered there, then I was hired to work there, and I was hired to work in marketing and sponsorship department. I worked there, and then Olympic Games was happening next. And we all that organizing committee, we just finished in July, August, and everyone was sending their resumes for the Olympic Games. And it was less than a year out. And the interesting thing was I had really good experience in marketing back in time, but all the marketing positions were filled. But they were, okay, hang on there. We know you have experience working in the games. There might be something else. And then suddenly they offer me a position in anti-doping. And I'm like, what? I have no experience. I have no knowledge. Honestly, I'm afraid of needles. Like, how are you offering? And they tell me, no, it's fine as long as you have experience in the games. As long as you know how everything works, managerial experience, you can figure it out. I'm like, okay, I had serious doubts about taking that position, and I was about to agree because, hey, it's Olympic Games. And then suddenly they said, hey, actually, someone else was chosen for that position, someone internally. And it's just an example of what can happen as long as you have experience somewhere, somehow, in something related. And anyway, they dropped off my application for anti-doping, but then suddenly again, my application is there. And if, like a week or two later, I receive a call about sports production. I'm like, what is sports production? Again, I have experience in marketing and working at events. So like, just go there. Again, you have experience, you can figure it out. We'll explain to you, and that's how I got involved. And I actually worked in doing all like the paperwork, contracts, scheduling, initial screening process for local hires. So just keep your mind open. It can happen from any experience that you have, any department, just combined with events experience.
And then she got stuck with me and had to go everywhere, venue to venue.
I was so lucky.
Totally
And
scored.
it's because of, I have a Sochi stray who's asleep here, a dog that we found on the side of the road. Yeah, if it wasn't, like, Lily saved his life. So he's if it wasn't for
Safe
Lily,
to
he
that. I
never
just
would've got
helped
Sasha
Logan.
home.
Well, we're getting close to wrap up time, and I see a couple questions in the chat room, like, how can we work at the Olympics? We have spilled everything we know thus far, but it's the links that are in the chat that we all need to start following, and we all need to start sharing. Tempo's always been about sharing information and not hoarding it. There's enough jobs for everybody, and there is going to be enough jobs for everybody. So please just keep doing what we do at Tempo and sharing and celebrating. When somebody has an in, it would be awesome to share it when you're ready. I'm going to try to work my way in as hopefully supplying contractors. If there's a way they want to come to one resource, that's going to be my goal. So you know me, I'll be always looking out for you guys as well. But follow those links. This has been recorded. We're going to share it to the Tempo team on Slack. It'll be in next month's newsletter as well, so that we can just keep plugging away. But I think this was just the eye opener. I hope you didn't think it was clickbait. I just thought about that. It was truly everything we have that we know right now to get us in the Olympics, because you guys kept asking me, how can I get in the Olympics? And this is all I know. And these are the people that know how to do it. So we're all going to try
I think
together.
if you just truly do all the things that you love, somehow you're going to find the perfect job. So, you know, for me, it was like sports, travel, production, and then it was Olympic Games. And so if your goal is like Olympic Games, just every day try to do something towards that goal. Like, do a little bit of research. If you want to go to Milano Cortina, learn Italian, you know, whatever it is. And I guarantee you we'll all get there, especially here. I don't know, I know everyone's all around the country, but already just being American is helpful, because I know that LA does not plan to bring in a lot of foreigners the way that other games have. So I know they're trying to make it US based. So already that's good. And yeah, I'm sure I'm all going to see you there in 4 years.
And I remember when we got the bid, you're like, do you know how old we're going to be? I was like, I don't care,
Believe
Christy,
me.
we're going. Well, it was so great, Christy. Thank you so much for taking time. It was so great to see you. And you actually brought back a little reunion of Olympic friends. So thank you for doing that. And thank you, everybody, for showing up and telling us what you've done and sharing your experience. And let's just keep it up.